Over the past 2 years, I've gradually but completely fallen in love with the Witcher series. What started out as playing the game and thinking, yeah, this is a pretty good game, over time turned into a near obsession with needing to devour every bit of content related to this world that I could possibly get my hands on. The themes of family, friends, and just doing your best to make a good life in a world that is often harsh and cruel resonate heavily with me, and the characters are well-rounded, diverse, and lovable. I am autistic, and as such, I identify with the Witchers themselves especially, viewed by many as freaks and outcasts, and seeing and interacting with the world differently than others do. In spite of being misunderstood by many, Geralt does his best to adapt to the world and form bonds with people who are willing to understand him, and in turn, he learns how to be more human himself. I am also part Polish, and the series' heavy themes of Polish mythology and culture were also very interesting to me. Side note, I fail to see any issue with the rune word, which reportedly makes everything taste like pierogies. Of all the content in the Witcher universe, the third game is definitely my favorite piece. However, I'm slowly working my way through the books and enjoying them quite a lot. They are well written, chock full of difficult moral questions and deep emotional connections between characters. But you've seen the title of this video, you know there's a but coming. This is probably obvious, but this video will contain some spoilers for the Witcher series, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go wolf down all that sweet content and then come back to watch. Although the world of The Witcher and its characters originated with the books, I simply haven't felt the same deep love for them that I did for the series games, especially the third one. This may be because as an artist, I'm a very visual person and connect more with works where there is a heavy visual component. But a large part of the fault for this is the original author, Andrzej Sapkowski. In this video, I'll be addressing two things: Sapkowski's attitude towards his own work and its adaptation, and also the broader cultural attitude towards video games as an art form in general. Although I don't have a lot of details about the disposition of either Sapkowski or CD Projekt Red at the time when the first Witcher game was made, no one could force Sapkowski to allow games to be made of his book series. The rights for his books to be adapted into a game series were sold by him, and he made this decision willingly. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the demand Sapkowski made in October of 2018 for $16 million from CD Projekt Red. As a creator myself, I have mixed feelings about this. I feel creators deserve adequate compensation for use of their works. However, I also feel like this was a cash grab on Sapkowski's part, and given the comments he has made about the games, kind of an arrogant and disingenuous thing to do. I'll be linking an article with more details about the situation in the description, so feel free to read up on it and draw your own conclusions. What I do take great issue with are the comments Sapkowski made about the games shortly after the release of Witcher 2. In an interview with Eurogamer, Sapkowski said the following: "I've never played any computer games, be it fantasy or others. Sometimes I read through dedicated gaming magazines or watch television programs. Graphics and technology sometimes I admire. I cannot say anything about the plots, though, apart from the fact that some types of games seem to lack any story whatsoever. They seem to be all about the hack and slash." While I can certainly understand that video games are not something Sapkowski takes an interest in, he seems to take an attitude of disdain for them and considers them an inferior storytelling medium to his books. He's also quoted as saying, "Transfer a book into a virtual world? Funny, it's impossible. If we level the field between books and their adaptations in other media, only the former can be the ones telling a story. There can never be a different relation between a book and its adaptation, other than the one that without the book, the adaptation would not exist at all. A story can only be contained in a book." These quotes frustrate me because Sapkowski also admits to never having seen a single second of gameplay or cutscene footage from any of the Witcher games and only having viewed concept art. The funny thing is that he wouldn't even have to play the games to see what a fantastic job CD Projekt Red has done of adapting his world and characters. That much is evident simply from watching a few cutscenes or an hour or two of gameplay. While it's certainly true that the Witcher games would not exist without Sapkowski's books, just as any adaptation would not exist without its original work, it's hard to argue that adaptations can't sometimes expand upon or make a story better, or even simply tell it just as effectively as the original medium. I feel this shows a great amount of arrogance on Sapkowski's part. As an aspiring novelist myself, I would be beyond flattered if anyone made adaptations of my work, especially adaptations which I had the opportunity to contribute to heavily, which was offered to Sapkowski and which he declined. The Witcher games have added more stories, characters, plots, and locations to the Witcher world. They have transcended adaptation and have become an expansion and an improvement upon the world Sapkowski originally created. And I can't help but feel sad at the potential that has been lost in Sapkowski's unwillingness to accept and collaborate with CD Projekt Red. But he's more than happy to take money from them. Sapkowski seems to think that the Witcher video games are only popular because of his books, and while that may be true for his own country, the books were virtually unknown internationally before the first Witcher game's release in 2007. He's also been disproportionately supportive of the Netflix series, which, from everything that's come out about it thus far, looks to be a far less faithful and respectful adaptation of his original stories than the games have been. Sapkowski has stated that the Geralt of the games is not the same as the Geralt of the books, merely a character with the same name who shares a similar story. But Sapkowski had every opportunity to provide his input and chose not to, so it seems kind of odd to criticize CD Projekt Red for their interpretation of his world and characters, which he has admitted to knowing nothing about, when he provided no input to influence the characters being adapted to this medium in the quote-unquote correct way. But that's probably because Sapkowski, along with a lot of other people, doesn't seem to think that video games are capable of telling a story in any capacity, which brings me to my second point. No one ever debates whether movies, TV, music, or books are forms of art. That is an undeniable fact. And yet video games, which more often than not contain writing, cinematography, complex writing, and characters, tend to get the response of, I don't know. I'm not sure. I understand that games are not a medium everyone can connect to. However, to deny their artistry in today's world is simply ridiculous. Games oftentimes contain 10 times the content of your average film, or even more, be that in the form of story, writing, cutscenes, or character development. Speaking specifically about The Witcher, I've never seen a movie that I connected with on the same level that I connected with Geralt or Ciri. I have never read a book that made me feel I was stepping into the shoes of a character who I at once understood on a deeply personal level, while also experiencing perspectives I had never considered and interactions I would never have. The Witcher is not a typical dialogue wheel game. You don't set Geralt's personality in the way you choose to respond to the world. Geralt is Geralt, and although you have some choices to make in his wording, tone, and actions, every choice is unequivocally Geralt. This isn't to say that there isn't a high level of artistry and storytelling in games where you do set the personality of your main character with your responses. The Dragon Age and Mass Effect games come to mind, or games without dialogue choices or dialogue at all where interactivity is limited strictly to gameplay. There's still so much in terms of design, story, concept art, programming, motion capture, voice acting that goes into these games. However, I believe those games still don't have the same depth of character, emotion, and connection that the Witcher games have. For those who are still on the fence as to whether or not a game can be considered art, consider the following. What would you call the entire saga of the Bloody Baron, an abusive husband and father struggling to better himself to win back his family, with Geralt and the player caught in the middle of the situation, being asked at every turn to make judgments as to whether or not the man is worthy of his family's forgiveness? What would you call the quest in which you find Ciri, finally, after dozens of hours of gameplay and searching, only to find her seemingly dead, and then have her come to life again and reunite with Geralt? What would you call the moment when Ciri decides to stop the White Frost and Geralt tries unsuccessfully to stop her before she leaves, and he's left alone, grappling with the question every parent must at some point or another? When do you let your child go? When can you trust that you've done an adequate job as a parent and they must brave the world on their own? To bring this back to my original point, I believe The Witcher is the current peak of artistry in video games, much in the way literary classics and beloved classic films are the peak of artistry in their respective fields. And if we are having an argument as to whether or not this game can be considered art, what does that say about the other pieces in this medium? Does any piece of art that doesn't reach the same level as the Mona Lisa just not matter? I hope that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt can finally put to bed this debate. I hope that people can begin to understand that video games are a largely untapped reserve of artistic and storytelling potential, and it would be an absolute shame if this potential is not utilized because people in the world who aren't familiar with video games dismiss them as not being a real art form. What video games do you think define the medium in terms of their artistry or storytelling prowess? What are your theories as to why video games have taken so long to begin to be accepted as a form of art? I'd be happy to hear what people think in the comments. In the future, I'd like to do some more videos about the world of The Witcher and some deep dives on lore and characters, so if there's a specific topic you'd like to see, let me know. Thanks so much for watching, subscribe for more Witcher content in the future, and good luck on the path.